Hello to everybody, and thanks for joining us this week on Up in the Air. I'm Amanda Reynolds.
And I'm Casey Lahecka. We've had some great episodes this semester, but unfortunately, it's coming to a close.
It definitely is, but for this final week, we do have a jam-packed episode.
We sure do. We have a feature about nor'easters, stories about hurricanes, and Nathan will stop by later for our climate outlook.
But for right now, let's start with Update in the Air. Are you less active than you should be? You may be able to blame the weather. Research shows that the preferred environmental temperature to exercise in is 60 to 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Study subjects walked an average of 5,987 steps per day. As would be expected, the number of steps per day decreased as temperatures got significantly cooler and as temperatures drifted further and further from this preferred range. However, that preferred range varied based on where you lived. Most people preferred to exercise in an environment that was slightly cooler than the average temperature. For example, Sao Paulo, Brazil inhabitants preferred temperatures above 90 degrees, but were less active than those in Sydney, Australia that had a cooler climate. Rain can also play a big role in activity levels. People took an average of 12% fewer steps when it was raining heavily than when there was no rain. In addition, research shows that women take fewer steps in the rain than men do.
With the winter season approaching, snowstorms and blizzards are at the forefront of everyone's mind. It seems that every time a big snowstorm is in the forecast, the media hails it as record-breaking or historic in some way or another. But how do these storms truly match up to the worst storms to hit the United States? The worst storm on record occurred in 1888 and brought 40 to 50 inches of snow to Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. Ranking second on the list was the Great Appalachian Storm of 1950, bringing heavy rain, wind, and snow through the Carolinas to Ohio, as much as 57 inches of snow in some areas. The storm of the century in 1993 wreaked havoc from Canada to Cuba, causing $6.6 billion in damages. With the seasons coming upon us, it's always helpful to be prepared for the worst.
For a meteorologist, is social media a friend or a foe? The simple answer is both. The interaction between meteorologists and social media has come a long way in the last several years. We went from only being able to communicate with the public on the evening newscast to being in contact 24/7. We can now see what the weather is like anywhere, anytime. But there are some downfalls to this wealth of information. Now everyone is their own weather forecaster, with mobile apps becoming all the rage, and every model run like this out on the internet, the hype train can sometimes be unstoppable. For example, the next time a model run 1 week out shows 2 feet of snow for New York City, immediately someone will share it with the caption, "New York City, historic blizzard, is this the end?" But is that really the case? Likely, the model will even itself out within a few days and settle on a reasonable 2 to 3 inches. And now the public views it as a busted forecast. However, in the past 10 years or so, the immense benefits from social media allow us to overlook some of these downfalls. The real-time information that it provides us in severe weather situations have made it so that meteorologists that you see on air have the most accurate information in a short amount of time. So keep some of this in mind the next time you see a weather article screaming about the next blizzard.
A researcher has successfully generated a 3D simulation of deep jet streams and storms on Jupiter and Saturn, helping to satisfy our eternal quest for knowledge of planetary dynamics. Since the pioneering telescope observations of Giovanni Cassini in the mid-17th century, stargazers have wondered about the bands and spots of Jupiter, says Maura Temple, a physics professor at the University of Alberta, whose study produces simulations of the observable phenomenon. The bands he references indicate jet streams while the spots signify storms. Hempel is studying the dynamics between the two. The average citizen can now pick up a backyard telescope and see the structures that we write about today. However, even in the present age, with the Cassini spacecraft orbiting Saturn and Juno craft approaching Jupiter, there is considerable debate about the dynamics of the atmospheres of the giant planets. Hempel notes that despite 350 years of observation, the origin and dynamics of the planetary jet streams and vortices or planetary storms remain debated.
Did this Atlantic hurricane season seem a bit lackluster to you? That might be because it actually was, and was well forecasted by hurricane scientists. Many forecasters knew that this fall was going to be a very strong El Nino, which would lead to a calmer Atlantic hurricane season. The only question was how strong it would ultimately be. The European model did a fantastic job predicting this year's El Nino. The reality fell well within the forecasted parameters from March 2014, as is shown here, but the models weren't completely right. While they forecasted cooler ocean waters off of the African coast, which was very accurate, they did not catch on so well to the warmth in the Atlantic. It was this warmth that actually allowed some stronger hurricanes like Danny and Joaquin to form. These storms, however, were ripped quickly apart by the stronger upper-level shear in the Caribbean brought on by the El Nino. Overall, these models and forecasters did an excellent job in forecasting this tropical season. They were more accurate than the long-term average and significantly better than the 10-year average from 2005 to 2014. What this tells us is that we may not always be perfect in forecasting, but we are making steady improvements. We'll be back in a moment with more.
Welcome back to the show.
As we make our way into the beginning of meteorological winter, the likelihood of snow is increasing.
That's right, Eric Zimmerman joins us this week with a feature of nor'easters and the North Atlantic Oscillation.
Snowstorms are something that interests both meteorologists and the general public. This is especially true in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions due to the dense population of the region, as well as the types of snowstorms that can develop there. These storms are often referred to as nor'easters. They can have a huge impact on this area, so it is important to know how climate change will affect the frequency and intensity of these storms. It is known that the North Atlantic Oscillation, or NAO, plays a major role in determining snowfall in the Northeast. Positive NAO leads to below average snowfall, while negative NAO leads to above average snowfall. Studies have determined that climate change is leading to NAO patterns that are more variable. As can be seen here, the NAO index has been a lot more erratic in the past few years. What this means is that climate change would lead to the Northeast frequently changing between periods of above average snowfall during negative NAO and periods of below average snowfall during positive NAO. Also, due to the general warming of the atmosphere, this means the atmosphere can hold more moisture, so on average, snowstorms will lead to more snowfall. Studies have also shown that climate change is leading to more precipitation extremes, so this would mean the periods of above average snowfall would include many significant snowstorms, while the periods of below average snowfall would include significant snow drought. So what we have learned is that climate change will likely lead to erratic and variable snowfall patterns for the Northeast as a result of a more variable NAO, a warming atmosphere, and more precipitation extremes. An example is shown here, as the Philadelphia seasonal snowfall totals have become a lot more erratic and extreme in recent years. By being aware of this information, the Northeast region can be better prepared for snowstorms while subsequently reducing the negative impacts they may have. For Up in the Air, I'm Eric Zimmerman.
Thanks for tuning back in.
After the cold and rainy start to the week, temperatures are just starting to work their way back up. Nathan is standing by at the climate wall to give us more on the forecast. Nathan?
Thanks, Casey and Amanda. Taking a look at what we saw over the month of November in State College, it certainly was a warm November. Our warmest high of the month actually got all the way up to 75 degrees, which not only is rare for November, but this was actually higher than our warmest high temperature we saw in all of October, which is pretty strange. Our coldest high was 35 degrees. Our warmest low for the month was 59, which is really unseasonably warm. This was also warmer than our warmest low in October. Our coldest low of the month was 25 degrees, which isn't really all that cold for November. Typically, by the end of November, our normal lows are in the upper 20s. Our rainiest day was 0.81 inches, and our snowiest day was only a trace, same as October, that's all we've been able to muster so far as we head into, well, now, meteorological winter. Still only a trace. Normal high for December 4th here in State College, 42 degrees. Our average low is 26. So our mean comes out to about 34. We're getting close to 32 for our mean temperature, so our chances for snow are going to increase, at least climatologically speaking, as we go through December. Typically in December, we see about 8.1 inches of snow or ice. We didn't see any measurable snow other than a trace in October and November, but those chances of us continuing that trend are going to go down as we head into December. 2.88 inches of regular precipitation expected during the month of December. We're not getting snow here in Pennsylvania, but parts of the country are. In fact, 38.7% of the nation is covered right now, and most of that is across the Midwest, extending westward into the Rocky Mountains, portions of the Cascades and Pacific Northwest, and a little tiny baby spot up here in Maine. But other than that, all of the snow is west of the Mississippi River right now. An example of this would be right here in Jackson Hole. It's beginning to look a lot like ski season. Well, out there it is, not in the eastern United States, but a pretty picture nonetheless from Jackson, courtesy of Snow King Mountain out there in Wyoming. Here's a look at our pattern for next week. Not a whole lot going on. There's a split flow, so most of the cold air is going to be bottled up north of here, so snow chances aren't that good. Most of the real warm air is going to be bottled to our south, so mainly temperate conditions expected over the next couple weeks. But as we head towards December 11th, there's going to be a pretty big trough forming in the west and a weak ridge forming in the east, and those will interact to bring us some changeable weather as we head towards the middle of December. But until then, we're expecting well above normal temperatures here in the northeast, New England, extending westward into the Ohio Valley and up through Minneapolis and Chicago. Above normal also across the Gulf Coast states, extending up through the Midwest. Maybe not quite as anomalous as here in the northeastern section of the state, but probably warmer than average for those folks as well. Same thing from Texas up through Denver into the northwest and extending westward to the Pacific Ocean. As far as precipitation is concerned, well, above normal precipitation in December might typically mean good weather for skiers, but unfortunately, because we're going to be well above normal, most of this is going to be in the form of rain pretty far north. But we will be above average as far as precipitation is concerned. Better news is we'll be above average with precipitation out west, where there's some areas still struggling with the drought. Those places would include California, Oregon, Washington, as shown here on our drought monitor. Severe drought. This area is shrinking a little bit. It's not as bad as it was in December, but let's face it, it's still bad throughout much of central California. Pretty bad east of the Cascades up through Oregon and Washington. Also kind of bad across western Montana right now. And then some spotty areas of drought as you get further inland and away from the Pacific Ocean. Some blotches of drought in the Midwest. Little area drought here in Indiana, extending up through Detroit, and also up the I-95 corridor in southern New England, a little bit of drought, but nothing too severe. The rest of the country really not faring all that bad as far as drought is concerned. That's all I have at the Climate Wall. Let's send it back to the desk to Casey and Amanda.
Thanks, Nathan.
Well, that does it for this week. As we close out this semester, we would like to wish Amanda well, as this is her final episode here on the show.
Thanks, Casey. It's been an amazing experience working with everyone on Up in the Air this past year, and I look forward to making guest appearances in the future. As always, a big thank you goes out to all of the Penn State students who contributed to the show, and to you, the viewers, for tuning in.
Make sure to join us next semester for more episodes with our new members, Casey and Mike. But for now, I'm Casey Lahecka.
And I'm Amanda Reynolds. See you next time, Up in the Air.